Guys, we've made it to the top 10. Now, if you're still watching at this point, thank you very much. If you're liking this video and you're interested to see my in-depth thoughts on the series as we go on up to the release of No Time to Die, please think about hitting that subscribe button, hitting the like button on this video, leaving me a comment with your own ranking as well, where you'd agree and where you'd disagree. I'm always up for a debate, especially when it comes to James Bond. Let's dive back into the list. At number 10, we have Timothy Dalton's first appearance, and that is The Living Daylights. Again, with this film, I think it's a really strong introduction for Bond. I think that Dalton absolutely just steps into the role of a more serious Bond perfectly. It's the Bond of the novels. Whenever I read the novels, I always imagine Timothy Dalton. I just think that he is the closest that we've got to Fleming's sort of description, of Bond's character, if you like. I really like the way that the story takes him all over the globe, and it sort of brings back the whole sort of sort of Americans and English allied versus sort of the Russian, the Cold War, and I love the bits where they go to Afghanistan and they obviously team up with the local forces there. I really like the fact that obviously the leading lady of the film, Cara Milovy, what am I on about? I really love that she's almost like the fall guy. She's set up to stage the assassination of Georgy Koskov, and if Bond had followed his direct orders, she'd have been picked off, and it's when Bond realises that there's more to the story. The weakest part of the film is the two villains. You've got Georgy Koskov and you've got Brad Whitaker. Brad Whitaker's an arms dealer, and Georgy Koskov is a defecting Russian agent who he's basically defecting for his own, his own personal gain, rather than because he doesn't agree with any sort of politics of Russia or anything like that. Those are the weakest points of the film. The soundtrack's fantastic, as pretty much all the Bond soundtracks are. I think Dalton is absolutely fantastic in it. He's probably his weakest point is balancing the humour. There are a few moments where they try to give him some jokes that Roger Moore would have, handled perfectly. And the scene that springs to mind is where the cops are chasing them through the Alps, and Bond sets the laser on the police car, and it brings the chassis off the car. So when they brake, the car falls in two, and you can just hear Roger Moore going, "Oh, it was salt corrosion, my dear." Raises the eyebrow sort of thing. But when Dalton does salt corrosion, it's. It doesn't quite have the same flair, and in License to Kill, obviously they tone that down a bit and lean more into Dalton's strengths. But yeah, that one takes my number 10 spot. In at number 9, this is a film that in the last sort of 4 or 5 years I've really grown an appreciation for, and it's fast come from being at the bottom of my list to being in the top 10. And being one of my favourites. So about 8 years ago, myself and my good friend Phil, who I sometimes collaborate with on videos, and we are in a band together and play together fairly regularly. We did a marathon of all the Bond films up to the release of Skyfall. So when Skyfall came out on home video, we watched all the films that had come out to date over the course of a long weekend. And teenagers for you. And when we watched From Russia with Love in series with that, I just sort of, found something in it that I'd never really found before. And now it's, like I say, it's firmly in my top 10. I love the scenes in Turkey. I love Kerim Bey as an ally. Tanya as the leading lady is brilliant. Rosa Klebb and Red Grant are absolutely fantastic villains. I love the whole bit on the Orient Express. It just all comes together, and it's just the perfect 60s espionage film. It fits in brilliantly with obviously Dr. No and Goldfinger as an absolute sort of holy trinity of films. It works really well when you watch it alongside things like the Ipcrest File and Funeral in Berlin and that sort of thing. It's just brilliant stuff. In at number 8. So we've got the first film that revitalised the Bond film series after an extended sort of leave of absence. In 1989, Licence to Kill came out, and after a troubled production, and then legal troubles with the studios that own the rights. We didn't see a Bond film for 6 years. In 1995, that changed, however. We got, obviously, GoldenEye, starring Pierce Brosnan, directed by the fantastic Martin Campbell, who obviously revitalised the series with Casino Royale as well, and has done some other fantastic stuff. No Escape, Mask and Legend of Zorro spring to mind. His recent efforts, another collab with Pierce Brosnan, The Foreigner, great director, and it sort of, like I say, it re-energised the franchise. It brought it back to life. It's the first one set post-Cold War. And they were really smart to take the commentary from the public at the time. A lot of film critics at the time were asking, is Bond still relevant now the Cold War's over? You know, it was very much an instrument of that. And, you know, the films were all really central to the Cold War. And it was always, you know, lingering somewhere. And they make that commentary throughout the film, not even subtly as well. The briefing scene with M, you know, you're a relic of the Cold War, and you know, he's in the opening sequences. He's under evaluation. One can presume from, you know, the events of License to Kill, where he goes rogue, and the fact that they get Sean Bean's character, who's 006, to be the villain, and he's essentially everything that James Bond is as well. He's had the same training. He's the same sort of age, and he's very much Bond's equal, and the flip side of the coin that is Bond. Just a really, really great and compelling villain. The secondary characters are great as well. Oromov's fantastic. Xenia is a brilliant femme fatale with the right level of comic relief in her character as well. The more campish comic relief comes in the form of Boris, the computer. It's got everything that you need. The only thing that lets GoldenEye down for me is the score by Eric Serra, and the fact that they had to bring in, I can't remember the other composer's name, but for the scene where there's the tank chase, they had to bring in at the last minute another composer to do a traditional sort of orchestral Bond theme. Really speaks volumes to me that they perhaps should have gone with another composer. In fact, I'd love for them, I know they'll never do it, but I'd love for them to let them go back and let David Arnold have a crack at what he would have done with that. I think that could really elevate the film even further. Obviously, the film spawned a hit video game that keeps getting remade, even nearly 30 years on from the film coming out. Now 25 years on, rather, should I say. We still get mobile versions of the game. It's been released on the Wii and on the PlayStation, and there's updates and there's sequels. It's really become a piece of pop culture just on its own as GoldenEye. And what a great film it is. In at number 7 is For Your Eyes Only. So this came out in 1981, after it was originally supposed to come out in 79, but as we talked earlier, the studio decided to cash in on the success of Star Wars and make Moonraker into a space adventure, and slotted that in For Your Eyes Only's release spot. So they wanted to take things back to basics with this one and make it more just a spy thriller and not rely too heavily on the gadgets. And I really like that. It's a revenge story. And, Bond's after the ATAC machine because he doesn't want the Russians to get it. And that's the sort of the MacGuffin of the plot, if you like. That's the bit that they're after. But he encounters Melina along the way. Now, her parents are killed in pursuit of that machine. And she's very much on this sort of pure, rage-driven revenge mission. And again, it kind of works similar sort of to Quantum of Solace in the sense of the two stories just end up happening to be on the same path together, and they team up, and like I say, it really downplays the gadgets. There's a couple of scenes in it like where Q has like a face identifying machine or whatever, and he does get like the Lotus Esprit back, but then he gets blown up, and it's sort of like no, we're actually gonna really have Bond rely on his wits and on his intelligence and on his skills in this one. And that's really interesting, to watch. It's also probably Roger Moore's darkest turn as Bond. There's the scene where he's, I think it's Locke, isn't it, the villain, and he's got the lapel pin, and he goes, and you left this with Ferrara, I believe. Throws it in the car, and then gives the car a boot off the cliffside, and you see the guy fall to his death. And Roger Moore famously came out and said that he wasn't too impressed with that scene and didn't think that his Bond would have done that, but personally really liked that they actually brought Bond a bit more back to basics and back to the character that he was originally written as, and made a bit more of a darker tale. Yeah, there's some scenes in it that are played for laughs, but you know, on the whole, I really like it. Number 6. I don't know why I like this film so much, but I do. I know this film is garbage, and this film shouldn't have been made, or at least with Roger Moore, and it's A View to a Kill. I absolutely love the villains that are obviously Christopher Walken's Max Zorin and Grace Jones's Mayday. The plot is more or less a carbon copy of the outline of the plot, at least for Goldfinger, and you know, it's strange that film compels me so little, but you know, Roger Moore's too long in the tooth for this. The leading lady, I forget what she's called. Is she Stacey? Is that the actress's name or the character's name? Either way, she's the geologist. She's annoying, and she's just, you know, this is one of the times where the whole damsel in distress bit doesn't work, you know, as a, you know, an addition to the story. It doesn't add anything. She's just annoying. Like I say, Roger Moore, you know, I think he was 58 when this film finished. Finished filming, if I could speak. He's too long in the tooth. He's had some work done or something in between, and bless him, he looks like he's been stretched out on his face within an inch of his life. He should have hung it up. They should have started Dalton earlier, or heck, we might have even got Brosnan, sooner than whatever. And I think this one could have been a really great film with somebody else. So why is it so high on my list? I just enjoy it. I don't know what it is, but the whole bit, you know, where they go to the races and Patrick McNay comes in as the MI6 consultant, and they go to the chateaus in France, and the whole bit, you know, with Mayday and Zorin, and love it. Yeah, it trails off a little bit then, but then I really like the whole mine sequence as well. I enjoy when we get to San Francisco. I just enjoy the film. It's just cheesy popcorn fun, and I think it's one of them that was always on when we were growing up, and I've just got a soft spot for it. But there you go. So in at number 5, my top 5 for the Bond films are pretty much steadfast. They haven't changed. The rest of the list sort of fluctuates over time, which is why we're interested to see where No Time to Die fits into it, and if my views and opinions change upon rewatching. But in at number 5 we have Octopussy. This is one that I've really sort of warmed to in the last sort of 5 years or so, probably more so. I'd probably had View to a Kill at 5 for a time. But every time I watch Octopussy, I just enjoy it more and more and more. The villains, I think they're great. Steven Berkoff's Russian general is just the right level of crazy. I really like the whole jewel smuggling bit going on with Louis Jourdan's Afghan prince. Maud Adams puts in an absolutely fantastic turn as the titular character Octopussy, who's the jewel smuggler. I think Roger Moore is, on a really good game with this one, and really, really, just leans into his 007 and sort of put 110% in. Obviously, this famously came out at the same time as Never Say Never Again, and I really think that everybody tried to put 110% into it. Is it a perfect film? No, it's most certainly not. I know that this one is quite often low down on a lot of people's lists. I know that the clown scene at the end, a lot of people don't like, and I completely understand why. I've always found that scene to be really quite tense, and that the whole fact that he's dressed up as a clown only adds to that for me. I can see why people think it would be silly, but I actually think that it really lends itself well to the situation, that he's had to go to that level of silliness to infiltrate the base to ultimately save everybody's lives. I can't remember who did it. It was a YouTuber years ago who drew comparisons to this film and a film that came out with Michael Caine around the same sort of time called The Fourth Protocol, and they are very similar films. So just as a complete aside, if you've never seen that, I'd recommend checking that out as well. It's got a similar sort of a feel to it. But yeah, in at number 5 is Octopussy. In at number 4 is Pierce Brosnan's second film. I hated this one growing up, and then about 10 years ago something just clicked into place for me, and I absolutely fell in love with it. I love David Arnold's score. Brosnan feels really relaxed into the role, and is playing his James Bond how he wants to play him. I really like the villain, and I think that it becomes a more and more poignant villain as social media takes over, and you know, the media in general becomes more and more prominent in everybody's lives. I just think that it's a really, really timely villain in Elliot Carver's head of a newspaper, you know, and in the wake of everything going on in the world and all the fake news and all that sort of stuff. I just really like how this film, for me, continues to sort of stay relevant. I liked the fact that the villain is actually just a guy pulling strings behind the desk, and he's not really somebody that can go sort of, you know, toe to toe with Brosnan's Bond or whatever, and that's where, you know, the likes of Mr. Stamper come in, and even though he's relatively sinister, he's also relatively comedic as well. There's Dr. Kaufman, and then you've got Ricky Jay in there as well, and I don't know, I love the film. I think it balances the action, the thrills, and I think it gets the best of the both worlds of what Connery would have brought to it and what Roger Moore would have brought to it as well. And you know, it balances the humour and the action, and it's my favourite by far of Brosnan's tenure. In at number 3 we have my favourite Sean Connery film of all of them, and it's Thunderball. I absolutely love this film, despite its troubled production. I feel that Connery, much like he is in Goldfinger to be fair, is again well and truly relaxed into the role. He's having fun with it, he's at the height of his career with it. I really find the story compelling. I love the whole, you know, sort of doppelganger bit, and the fact that the villain's only with the girl because they need access to the, you know, the person that she's involved with to get access to the missiles, and it's all for Spectre's diabolical sort of plans. I love the visuals in this film and the scenery. You know, they're out in the Caribbean, they're in Nassau, aren't they? And it's just beautifully shot. I really love the way Felix Leiter's portrayed in this film with Rick Van Nutter's portrayal. I wish that they could have brought him back for, you know, future sequels. If they could have had him in Diamonds Are Forever and in Live and Let Die, much as I like David Hedison's you know, iteration of the character, I think that would have served as a real continuity, and just a shame that never came to any sort of fruition. Like I say, I just really enjoy it. I know that there's critique about the underwater scenes, and yes, they can be a little bit hard to follow, but I just feel that on the whole, the film works really well, and has always just been one of my standout favourites. In at number 2 we have Casino Royale, the first film starring Daniel Craig as Agent 007. Martin Campbell again returns to direct and revitalises the Bond films for the second time in his career, only 10 years apart. This film is just absolutely fantastic. It was the first Bond film that I ever saw in the cinema. Both me and my dad were equal parts excited to go and see this. We went and saw it opening night. Mum booked us the tickets, and it was one of the first times I remember sort of being, you know, I'd have been 13 when this came out, and just being hyped to go and see this film in the cinema. And I remember it being one of the first times I was really hyped to see something. The film didn't disappoint. The cold open set in Prague, the black and white you know, intro where it's cutting backwards and forwards to the fight, and then we're talking to Dryden, and then when he shoots and the gun barrel comes up and we're into You Know My Name, and it's just absolutely perfect stuff. And then from there you're hooked. You know, there's the right, who's Mr. White and what's going on there, and then even the scenes with the card games must, you know, in amongst everything else, be 20, maybe 30 minutes worth of the film, and yet blokes playing cards, they managed to make it really interesting, like edgy your seat stuff. You're watching what's going on, and that's just the, you know, the product really of great filmmaking, great acting. You know, obviously Daniel Craig's more than proved himself now, but there was a lot of backlash when it came out that he was going to be James Bond, and I really don't think that they could have picked anybody better. I think it's going to be a real shame when he steps down after No Time to Die, and I really think it's a shame that they didn't get their fingers out and get at least, you know, we could have had 2 or 3 more films in the, you know, what is it, nearly 16 years that he's been James Bond. I really do think it's an absolute shame that we've not had any more. This film is more or less perfect, and there's only one film that sort of just pips it to the post. Well, folks, if you've made it this far in the video, thank you very much for watching. I really, really appreciate it. I'm not sure whether or not this is going to end up being one video or whether it's going to be a two-parter. Either way, we're at my number one pick, and I know that this is going to be a controversial pick. My number one pick is Licence to Kill. 1989, the last one directed by John Glenn, the last film starring Timothy Dalton. As I mentioned, when I was growing up, Dad used to watch these films, and in particular the Connery era ones, and I never really paid much attention to them for the longest time. They were on, I enjoyed them, but it was never something that I'd seek to go out and watch. And then one year we went on holiday. We've got family down in Wales. We're based in Yorkshire, and we went down to Wales to go and visit some family. And we were staying in like a Haven caravan park or whatever it was. And we were in one night, and there was a little TV in the caravan on like ITV2 or whatever. They played Licence to Kill, and I remember being hooked. I remember it being the first time I ever saw the film, and just being really hooked by the whole revenge story. I found that Dalton's portrayal of James Bond was really captivating, and I was really invested in that particular iteration of the character. I thought that the villain in Franz Sanchez was utterly compelling and absolutely terrifying. The guy's a real menace. Carrie Lowell is a great leading lady. Again, she can hold her own against James Bond. You know, she's very much mercenary in terms of her. You know, there she's forever saying, right, well, if we're doing that, the price goes up. I'm a huge Q fan, and the fact that they bring Desmond Llewellyn out into the field and give him a substantial part to play, and the fact that he owns it and does it really, really well. Was just another thing. I loved the whole South American setting, and I loved the score from Michael Kamen. He's my favourite film composer of all time, may he rest in peace. And I just absolutely adore the whole thing. And it was seeing that film that rainy night in that caravan with Mum and Dad that just something went, you know, a light bulb came on. It was like all of a sudden I was a Bond fan. And then from there I needed to collect the VHS tapes. I needed to then get the DVDs when they came out. They're up there. I've gotten, you know, all of these ones. You know, the whole series of the Ultimate Edition DVDs. I got the Bond 50 set when it's come out. I've bought special editions of them going forward. When they bring a 4K set out, you can bet I'll get them all on 4K as well. And this is the film responsible for that. Like I say, when I've gone and read the novels later, Dalton's Bond is the Bond that I picture in my mind. You know, especially when he's having like the internal monologues and reviewing things, I just think it's Dalton's Bond to a T. I think the way that he and Sanchez face off against each other in Licence to Kill, you know, is very much it's similar to the 006, 007 bit. You know, they're very evenly matched, and it's you know, it's a great thing. I like the fact that we'd not, you know, seen Bond rogue before. He's always getting the mission from M. He's always doing that, and it's ironic now that actually I just love them to go back from that, because it seems like the last 4 or 5 films, everything has been well, sod the mission, I'm doing what I want, and it's a bit long in the tooth now. But this was the first time we'd seen it. The film had a troubled production, as I'm sure everybody knows. It initially started out as license revoked, and then due to poor testing with American audiences around the title, and the making associations to like driver's licenses, I think was one of the things quoted in an article I read. They changed it to Licence to Kill, but they did that quite late on in the production. There were already a lot of advertisements out for license revoked. They opened it in the summer rather than in the traditional winter release, and I think it went head to head with Batman, Lethal Weapon 2 and Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. You know, 4 of the greatest films there ever made, in terms of, you know, sort of action and adventure in that sort of genre at least. And it sort of kind of got a bit lost under the radar. Dalton was going to come back for a 3rd film in 1991, but then all the legal troubles and the disputes I mentioned earlier in the video started to happen, and by the time they were all resolved, it was late 1994. Dalton said he'd come back and do one more, but understandably the producers were like, we're going to need you for at least 3 or 4 more to make sure that we maintain the brand. He couldn't commit to that, and then we finally got Pierce Brosnan in the role, who funnily enough would have taken over from Roger Moore in The Living Daylights had his option for Remington Steele not been renewed. So I suppose all's well that ends well, but that is the film that really sold me on this entire franchise. Whenever I go back and watch it, I just adore it. I absolutely adore it, and find it hard to find fault with. And I know that that comes from a place of nostalgia rather than if I was looking at it objectively. I will say if I was looking at this list objectively, it would be a completely different list, and I would imagine that the top 3 would be From Russia with Love, Goldfinger and Dr. No in some sort of an order. But like I say, my personal subjective list is, as we stand currently, the list that I've just gone through. Thank you so much for watching, guys. That's been a bit of a long one, hasn't it? Yeah, and I tried to do it unscripted and sort of speak from the heart, if you like, because I really wanted to try and sort of let my real emotions sort of shine through with this, rather than sort of try and script something for you that wouldn't be genuine to how I feel with it. As I say, in the coming weeks I'm going to start watching these films again and shooting little 5-minute, 10-minute reviews on them, starting obviously with Dr. No, working my way up to Spectre, and then I'm going to go see No Time to Die in the cinema just as soon as it comes out and as soon as it's safe to do so, and you'll probably get a little review in the car straight after it from there, followed by maybe a more in-depth review here in the movie space. Let me know down below your thoughts on the series. How would you rank them? You know, where do you agree with me? Where do we disagree? Let's talk about that. That's you know, it's something I always love to debate with fellow Bond fans, and it always surprises me. You know, just you can ask 100 Bond fans how they'd rank the series, you get 100 different answers, and that's one of the many things that lends itself so well to discussion in this area. If you've liked the video, guys, and you want to see more of this, you want to see the Bond series, you want to see me talking about physical media and movie reviews, discussing this collection in depth, please hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so that you're notified whenever I post a video. I try to have something out at least every Sunday for you, sometimes even 2 videos a week where I can. Thank you very much for watching again. Continue to stay safe, folks, and I will see you again soon. Cheers.